I wanted to talk about continuing ed today. And for us, continuing ed, if we look at it from a student perspective, should be about actually seeing what you would like to learn, buying what you would like to learn, and then actually be off and actually learning what you would like to learn. So a very customer-focused, easy to use, simple approach towards the process of actually, as a student, making sure that you can actually get the education you like, and also from an institutional perspective, actually making that process for the institution as such as simple as possible, so you actually are able to manage this process in a very timely, easy manner as well. Because when you're looking at a class that actually is going to last 2 hours, or if you're talking about a program that lasts 2 days, then having a heavyweight application process and a heavyweight admissions process and all kinds of student record processes, etc., is actually really not ideal at all, of course. It's very cool to have all of those things if you have a very interesting program that is going to last 5 years and actually only lets 20 people in per year. But when looking at continuing education, of course, you would like a completely different approach. Now, when we look at the approach for continuing education and we look at what we actually see as the basic concept here, this is how we see continuing ed. We actually see it as a person buying a product. And the person buying a product in that context is what we would call a transaction. I'm not going to speak about the actual educational side of things here. I'm just focusing on the administration of this particular process. So it's a person buying a product in the context of a transaction, right? That's all it is. Now, what do I need for that? I need a few things. I need a website or a CRM system or a direct sales or something where I can at least actually sell what I would like to sell to people, or offer what I would like to offer if there's no money involved. I need, in case of payment, I actually need either an online payment solution, or I would like to actually support deferred payment, whereby the person is going to actually get an invoice or a statement and actually has to pay to then actually enroll into the course he wants to go into, or the program he wants to go into, or the product he would like to buy. And then on the other side of the story, I need a product catalog. So I need to actually have a way to actually promote and a way to actually store what I am selling and actually make that available. And then, of course, I need a database to actually store personal data and transactional data, so that when people actually do enroll and when people buy particular education, that I am able to store the data and actually see what the status of the transaction that they're doing is. Now, to do that, I actually need at least two things, we feel. We need a sales platform and we need PeopleSoft. In our solution, or in our intent of how we look at continuing education, we don't feel that PeopleSoft is actually the place to really sell products. There is a zillion websites out there and a zillion solutions out there that actually offer very nice storefront solutions and very nice webshop solutions where you can sell products. Those solutions in many cases are not so well equipped to actually manage personal data, integration, progression, storing of information for long term, and so on, because they're actually not built for that. So having the combination of a robust system to actually store data and a nice sales platform, whatever that may be, a website or a CRM system or direct sales, doesn't really matter. Actually, that sales platform and campus solutions together can actually manage a transaction really, really well, we feel. Now, looking at it from a data storage point of view, we actually have just a simple minimum data storage that we actually need in the end, right? So as mentioned, we need to actually store the product, we need to store the person, we need to store the transaction and the status of the transaction. So the person may actually indicate they want to buy something and indicate that they're going to buy to actually pay the bill. But as long as they don't actually pay the invoice, our transactional status will not allow them to actually really enroll into the course, because there is actually no payment done yet. So the status in that context is also relevant, of course, to be stored. Now, this is the minimum that we actually need. Now think of all the extra things that you may want to add to this particular process. Now let this sink in for a second here, yes? So there's lots of things on this page because there's lots of things that you may want to do extra next to that basis. You may want to do discounts. You may want to have a connection to your CRM system just to make sure that you can actually market people afterwards. You may want these people to have a user account. You may want to do attendance tracking if it's actually a course paid by an employer, for instance. You may want to grade people. You want to at least make sure that you want to have deferred processing available. You want maybe to do certification or mini certification or micro certification. You actually would like people perhaps to have self-service capabilities. You want to calculate progression towards that certification. You want to maybe combine what you're selling as products with mainstream education, as I call it, where you're thinking about classes in particular programs that actually are also offered for students who are actually coming in through this continuing education model. All of those things are available in Campus Solutions out of the box. And all of those things you can utilize to actually make those add-ons available for your programs or your products that you're selling. You may not need them all, you may not need any of them if you want to in some cases, but in general, you can, because Campus offers you these capabilities. Now, if we think of something very simple, like a pre-recorded content that we're going to actually be selling, right? In that context, we only really need the absolute bare minimum. We need the personal data, we need to know what the person actually bought which product, and we need to actually make sure that we can sell the product. So the person is actually buying this particular 2-hour, 4-hour, 6-hour video, and maybe at the end there's going to be examination involved if you want to, but maybe it's just actually saying, okay, access to the learning management system or access to the video material for the next 3 months, and that's it. In context of actually having a live virtual meeting with people or a live in-person meeting, you actually have at least the minimum requirements that you had earlier, as well as you actually would need a particular event and a particular event meeting to actually store both the information about the event, where it's happening, as well as when it's happening. So we actually add on to the model an event and an event meeting or a series of meetings, whereby we are able to actually indicate to the students where and when this particular this particular product, quote, quote, this particular lesson or sets of lessons is going to happen. Now, of course, in the context of a live virtual meeting, we actually would also have to give access to the learning management system or to any broadcasting system that we have. So you may actually want to give people the user account, for instance, all those kinds of things to enable them to actually be part of that learning experience. Of course, we can do blended learning as well, which actually happens a lot nowadays, of course, whereby there's a combination of in-person meetings and virtual events. And in all of those cases, as you can see, we're actually using about the same functionality actually. Now, one of the things that is more and more becoming interesting as well is actually what we call virtual coaching, or just as well, of course, in-person coaching, whereby we have really one-to-one meetings that we sell. So we're selling coaching hours, literally, as an institution in that context. So products don't actually always have to be just a 2-hour listening to a professor or something like that. It could also be something like, as mentioned, a coaching session or an advice or something else that you're selling from the institutional point of view as knowledge or as support towards people. Right? So, and in all of those cases, as mentioned, you can see it there, we need the minimum, but then actually also perhaps we would like to add other things to it. Not necessary, possible, yes, because we've got the system to do so. Now, we've got in our solution, there's 3 pillars in my perspective. There's the product catalog that we actually have to support the sales transactions, and those sales transactions actually go through an integration, either web service or a file, to actually support information being exposed to people on an external website or CRM system or anything like that. And with that, we actually have a set of academic products. We have a set of packages of multiple products, perhaps. We have pricing. We have the pricing history. We can see who was actually enrolled in the past and who is actually going to be enrolled in the future. All of that actually in there. And then we have got the actual enrollment transactions, where we actually manage that through academic events. And we're actually managing the scheduling with that. We're managing the staffing with that. We're actually tracking the enrollments. We're actually making sure that we understand what is happening on that level in our continuing education model. And then, of course, very important to the student, but just as well to us from a CRM perspective, as well as from an academic perspective, it is about actually checking academic progress. So what's the enrollment history? What's the individual's academic progression that he's making? Is he actually on its way to a certification, yes or no? And can we actually track him or actually point him towards that? So 3 different pillars that actually all together make up this larger module that actually you can utilize to actually do your continuing education. Now, for years already, we've got one customer in the Netherlands who's actually been using this solution as such, the Enrollment Academy in the Netherlands. And they're utilizing an external website, as you can see here, that actually is going to track what people actually would like to buy or would like to study, so to say. They apply through the external website, and then the information from the external website goes back into Campus Solutions, and the whole process afterwards is managed within Campus Solutions. Now, if we look at continuing education in campus, then we're actually looking at a number of parts here. So as mentioned, there is the product offering, there is the purchase management or the enrollment management, the purchase management, the enrollment management, there's the finance, and then we've got a number of solutions around it, so to say, that we utilize, or a number of ways to interact with this model to utilize any possible way that you would like to actually connect to this particular module. We have the ability to actually upload files. We have the ability to actually connect with a web service to our model. We have the ability to enter transactions that people actually would like to do in the system. So transactions that you are selling people manually. And we also have the ability to actually do an online application form for continuing education, actually linked to Campus Solutions. A mini application form, of course, because actually what do we need? Their first name, their last name, their email address, perhaps their phone number, and then we would like to know what they're buying, and we would like to know if they bought it or not, or if it actually is going to be on an invoice basis. So in essence, actually 4 different ways of communicating and actually connecting to continuing education within Campus Solutions. Now, I would like to talk for a moment about product offering and then actually show you some of the other features that we actually have in Campus Solutions in a live demo, so to say. I can't show you everything because it's actually quite a large module, but I'm going to show you 2 key points that actually are available right now, and that actually gives you a nice flavor, I hope, of the simplicity and the simple way that we actually manage this particular process within Campus. So let's say that there is a new product that we actually need to create and we would like to actually expose to our external website. So what we would have is actually we would have a activity guide within Campus Solutions where we actually can create a course, create a product, create an event meeting, and with that actually create our whole product and actually be able to expose it to an external website. Now, as you see, there's actually only a few fields on this page available to actually create a course. This is on purpose because actually we don't want people to have to go to a course catalog or something like that to have to fill in 3 pages full of data. Actually, we know what they want. We actually can actually do a template behind the scenes to fill some data for them. And we are actually able to ask them, okay, tell me what the description is. Tell me how many groups, for instance. Tell me which teaching method you're going to be using. And that's it. Then actually you can continue to the next step. Or in case that there is no course involved, because what you're selling is coaching or pre-recorded video or an event that actually happens on a particular day and actually is not a course because it's just an open day where you actually can talk to people, in all of those cases, you could just skip the whole step. Now, if you want to actually edit some of the details, you could actually, of course, still edit the details. You could actually look at what we have defaulted in for you and then actually fill in some other values. But I bet you that in most cases, people will just actually fill in the details of the description, maybe actually number of groups, and then actually continue to the next step, right? So in the next step, we're going to create a course, a product, excuse me. So with our product type, of course, in the at hand here, and our course ID, we can now actually define a particular product. And for the product, we're actually figuring out where this product is going to live in the product catalog by asking which parent product it actually is going to be linked towards, because all of our products are going to be stored in a tree-like structure whereby we actually have a repository of all products, so to say. We have some product attributes that we actually show in here. We actually can do more information yet again if we want to through the details. But again, if you don't have any rules that you would like to apply, if there is no result actually linked to it, if you don't have any instructions, then why bother actually clicking on those details? Why not just actually continue? Fill in the name, fill in the product, and that's it. Now, then, next is your actual event. So now that you've actually defined your product and you've defined the description of the product, you can then also, of course, indicate when it's going to happen. So there's a start date, there's an end date to actually define when this particular event is going to happen. There may be some attributes at event level that you may want to add, and that's about it. Same counts here for linking these events to real mainstream education. If you fill in a particular term and a particular class number, you suddenly have a one-to-one match between your continuing education course and a real class happening via the course catalog and the schedule of classes for students who are actually seeking a degree. So really easy to actually manage information in this way and actually create the event. Now, create this event is actually done. You're going to click next. It's going to create the event. And then the last thing to do is actually create the event meeting. So in the event meeting, we're actually indicating which days or which day you're going to meet. You're going to indicate what the meeting staff is. You may, of course, enter some other information as well about the meeting resources, things like lunch, et cetera, that you may want to actually add to it. And with that, you're done. You're going to actually click finish. You may actually want to release this to the website already if you want to, and that's it. So instead of actually taking a large number of steps to actually create course catalogs and products and events and everywhere else, we're just actually making this all very simple and actually taking this all very seriously, but actually making it very easy for people to actually utilize and create a product and actually make that available on the website. Right? Now, I would like to talk about two different things here, if I can. Yeah, I'm still have the time. So I would like to talk, show you how we actually upload files. So we actually can have files, of course, that are either coming in because a company buys a particular product, which actually is for 30 of its employees and sends you an Excel sheet with a few names. And or you may have events whereby afterwards you would like to actually store whoever was on that event or actually made it to that event, actually want to store that information into Campus. Because in many cases, you have an event for alumni or an event for people who are actually, you have a community event or something like that, and you would like to store the information afterwards so that you can pass the information onwards to the CRM system and you can keep track of what people have actually done with your institution in that way. So file processing is really an important part in this continuing education story. And next to that, we're also going to talk a bit about purchase management to actually see how those transactions actually really happen in the system. Okay, it's demo time. Right, so let me just go into Campus. Hopefully it is still, nope, of course not. Talk too long, Ernst. So let me just sign on again. So here we are in Campus in our continuing education menu over here. So, and without further ado, let's just jump into the process, the file processing. Now, the file processing, we've actually created a file processing module where you actually can look for files that you've actually created earlier, but that are not completely processed yet, because you may have a file with 100 people, and some of those people may actually not be processed successfully already. And you also can actually process a new file. And when you process a new file, you can actually just click on, I want to process a new file. And then the first question that the system asks you is, okay, what is it that you're going to do with the information that's in this file? Right? So, and this is where the magic comes in. We've created a model whereby you can actually define your own business transactions, your own business events that you would like to actually process using this file. So you could, for instance, say, okay, I'm going to actually take a person that I don't know yet. I'm going to create him as a person. I'm going to put him onto I'm going to create an event for the people that actually were there in my Excel file, and I'm going to enroll the people that are actually in my Excel file in that event. Or I could say I'm going to create a person and I'm going to create a transaction for the person. Or I can say I would like to actually process 1,000 products and would like to create 1,000 events for those 1,000 products. So we've actually created a file processing module that actually is completely configurable by you to actually manage the transactions that you would like to manage with that. Now for today, I've actually taken a very simple example because I wanted to actually move on quickly here. So what I've done is I've actually said, okay, I'm going to create a file which actually is going to upload and create people in the system. And we're doing that on the basis of a first name, last name, and business address. That's what the file actually is going to expect. Now, if I take my file and I'm going to upload the attendees here, I can actually, well, I can see it in the system anyway. So I can upload my file and then I can actually view my file here. Oh, that's interesting. Normally I would say I can always actually look at my own file. Why not? It's my file. So you know what? Let me show it to you here. Right. So my file actually, as indicated, is proper and actually has the three columns that actually are requested by the system over here, and will therefore actually fit very well. So I'm going to actually click next, and yes, there they are. Look, there's the first names, the last names, and there's the business addresses. I can even, oh, there's still a typo here, so I can actually make a change here and actually save that information if I want to. And now the information is actually changed as I'm actually going ahead. And then, of course, the very important step actually over here is to say, okay, now that I've validated the information in this particular file, I can now actually process this particular file. And what's now happening behind the scenes is it's now actually processing 5 people and creating 5 people in the system. All of them successfully created. Now, the people that I've now created are not yet Ample IDs, or at least some of them probably will not, because actually my name, for instance, appears in the system multiple times already. What's going to happen is these people are going to be loaded into the staging area of PeopleSoft, the constituent staging area. We're going to do search match against them. And if the search match turns out that they're new people, they're going to be created as new people. And if they're actually existing people, then they're just actually given the same Ample ID as before. And if we're unsure, they're going to be stuck in search match so that somebody afterwards can validate what the information looks like. And of course, if we have created this person successfully and he has gotten an Ample ID, then we can continue with the next steps in the same process if we would have a process whereby we have multiple steps, like for instance, person creation, then enrollment into an event that needs to be created first. So we can actually create multiple transactions within one file and actually just pull people through a complete business process of multiple steps just by actually making those steps serial and actually managing those different steps one by one. Okay, so that was in a very quick nutshell actually file processing for you. Now, if we actually would go to purchase management then, so just to actually show you what happened, right? So here we actually have the people that were created today, right? So you can see the different people here, and you can see that somebody, me, is here now in suspended mode because actually it wasn't sure if I was still there. And then there's some other people that were created, and then there's even people here actually where the ID has been updated, you see? So we're not just creating Ample IDs in the system, of course not. We're actually going through constituent staging where we're actually validating if people actually are really who they are and are actually either known or not known, and then we continue through to the next steps. Now the next step, of course, is then to actually do the actual transactions. This can happen either through application form or file or web service or manual entry. Okay, so in all of those ways, we can actually create that very important transaction that we need to create to actually make sure that we can actually get the information into PeopleSoft and actually, let's say, indicate what is really happening with these people and the purchases that they're doing. Now, here we look at a person transaction. So this is a person transaction indicated by the fact that there's a person over here at the top. And of course, It's not always a person, right? It's also sometimes an organization. So organizational transactions are also possible. A company can buy a product for 20 people, actually in one transaction. We store the transaction, we link the 20 people to the transaction, and we link that to the company. Now, but in this case, it's a person who bought a particular product. And we have an amount for it for 500. There is a discount being given for 100, so the account balance at this point is actually 400 for this person, right? So what do we see here? We actually have an enrollment, so we actually have an item, a product that the person has bought, and that product actually is linked to a particular event ID. And if we wanted to, we could actually go and actually see the underlying event and actually check that out and say, okay, this is actually an event where there is an item linked to it, and there's a start date and an end date. We are also actually possible of linking this particular career and term and class number to it, so that we are actually able to make sure that everything is set up correctly for this, and that it's linkable to continue to a mainstream course if you want to. You don't have to, but you can, right? Because actually we don't need classes, we don't need admissions, we don't need student records, we don't need term activation, we don't need class enrollment. Because what we're doing is we're actually linking the person to the product via the transaction. So here is actually the enrollment data. Here we have the person buying this particular product in this particular event, and then there is actually a start date and an end date and an attendee number, and there's a status. And that is actually what indicates if this person is going to actually be educated or not. And this, of course, depends on, has the person actually paid the bill, right? And is he coming? Now, on the payment side, as you know, nowadays, there is, of course, more and more cases whereby people are actually not paying the bill themselves. So we've got a payment screen here whereby we can indicate multiple charges that the person has to pay. And in this case, the person actually pays tuition and a bit of book fees and a bit of medical care, and actually has a waiver there. And that's why you see a charge for 400 and a charge for 15, another charge for 15, another waiver for 100. But we could also say, actually, it is the person's mother or whoever who is going to be paying the bill. So we're going to move this money over from here to here, and we're going to say that actually now the mother is going to be paying the bill instead of the student paying the bill himself. And the same could count, hey, that's interesting. And the same could count, just choose another one, who cares, not working. And the same could count for actually having an organization there whereby we say, okay, I am buying this transaction, but my company is actually paying the bill. You see, these are the external organization table entries in PeopleSoft, of course. So if you indicate in your application form, in a file, in the web service or whatever, that a company is going to pay for you, we're going to store this over here. And we're going to actually maybe give you half the bill for 200 and actually have the company pay the other 200, for instance. So within one screen here, we're able to actually manage the full transaction and actually manage the full financial process to actually manage this particular manage this particular transaction for this particular person. Now, as you can see here, we've got both, we got posted, we got billed, we got paid, we got reversed, because what we can do now is we can say, okay, we know which item types they are going to be using. The products have item types linked to them. So the person who is actually managing this transaction, in 99% of the cases, doesn't even have to open the details. But if there's tax involved, there is actually specific cases, you could still open the details and actually manage this information here. Same counts for invoicing. Yes, we know what billing address you would like normally, and we normally know what billing request ID we have, but we can, of course, store that information here. But most importantly, we can actually check the bill, check the boxes, and actually say, okay, listen, we're going to actually be charging you with 400. So now we're actually pushing out into student financials that this person has to pay 400. And if we now look at the account of the student, actually I've used this one before today, so let's see the details here to see that there's actually now a charge of 400, because we have that. Here's the charge of 400, as you can see. The other ones were actually tested earlier today, but Here's the 400 charge plus a bit of tax, as you can see as well, that's been applied as this particular item had tax linked to it. So we are actually able now from this transaction, from this transaction, we are able to actually manage. I'm just going to actually do this, sorry. Nothing to do with this tool, anything to do with the environment, but never mind. From this particular tool, we're now actually able from this page to actually manage posting charges, billing people, creating invoices, entering payments that actually have happened, even reverse particular payments or charges that have been posted and actually need to be reversed. So we're taking student financials in its full width and we're actually putting it into one little grid over here. And as you've also noticed and actually heard me say, we are able to manage person-to-person relationships whereby other people are paying the bill for the student or organizations paying the bill for students. And we don't need third-party payment, we don't need third-party contracts, we just actually manage this all through the transaction that we have over here. So this transactional page actually manages the full transaction of the person and his enrollment. Here we manage the enrollment when he's coming, what he's going to do. Here we actually manage anything we have to do around the payment that the person has to do. And of course, once everything is paid that he needs to pay, then of course the enrollment status will actually may become definitive and the status here will actually become posted or completed. And then we actually are able, depending on what you want in your configuration, and then we are able to actually indicate that this person is definitely coming, so to say. So a very simple page to actually manage a complete process of the student. Now, once the student is actually really definitely coming, then definitively coming, excuse me, then we can also actually manage the storing of this information of the student into his progression table, so to say, which are part of program enrollment in our case, and we're actually then storing it again in a simplified manner, in a simplified view. Actually, we can then actually get the overview of the product that the person has bought, the grades, if there are any that the student may have actually gotten for those particular enrollments that he's done. And with that, we can actually then visualize both for the administrator as well as for the student, the progression of the student during time. And of course, also very important, with it, we have got a fantastic opportunity to actually send all that information back to CRM and actually target the people again to actually maybe do another course, maybe come back for a particular rehearsal of something and actually do the next, buy the next product that we actually would like this person to sell, that we would like to sell this particular person. Okay, so very easy and manageable way of actually managing your purchases, so to say. Of course, we've got the ability of Campus Solutions with either Kibana or Pivot Grids or anything to actually report on any of the information. There is a humongous, I may say, amount of configuration, but therefore also a humongous amount of information that you can actually configure yourself. And with that, make this whole continuing education model as flexible as you want it to be, and actually have full control over how this process is going to happen in practice and in detail, so to say. So the actual end users will have a very simplified way of actually utilizing the information, while the institution as a whole, and from an information point of view, has all the abilities it needs to actually get that data stored in the system in the way the system wants. And as you have noticed, we're using student financials, so a connection to a financial system through a general ledger interface, no problem. A connection to a third-party payment providing system, no problem, because probably you already have one for your normal students anyway. Connections to your Active Directory, connections to your learning management system, all of those things are already there. Actually giving these people self-service access, why not? They're just students. So all of that is already there. And what we have done is we've taken out the We've taken out admissions, we've taken out student records, we're not doing program and plan, we're not doing student enroll, we're not doing class enrollment, we're not doing term activation. All of that is not necessary. We have a person buying a product in a transaction. Okay? Now, last comments to make here. So, not going to go into too much detail on this one because actually I just talked about it. Different ways of actually getting the information into PeopleSoft, always going through that search match layer to make sure that we actually know who this person is before we create him in PeopleSoft, and actually having the ability and the capabilities that actually Campus Solutions has to actually manage those specific transactions and integrations in the perfect and easy way that it actually normally does that. And as you can see, everything is actually fluid. Everything is capable of be managed on any device that the administrator or the student would like to use. And also, hopefully, as you have seen as well, as flexible and as easy as it can be, so to say. No longer difficult systems with large capabilities and therefore large amounts of screens. No, simple activity guide, simple screens, simple way of actually managing the business process.
Ernst, I'm so sorry, I have to jump in because we are at our hard stop time, but you have one question that I passed over to you. I don't know if you can see it, but it's from Sean, who asks, with this solution, can the continuing ed course end up on the transcript as part of the overall student record? And you have a minute to answer that.
And I'm going to say yes, if you actually are going to extend the transcript to actually look in one other table, yes. So let's say we are actually storing the information about the student doing the enrollment into the course in the program enrollment tables for students. So program enrollment knows that this person actually has done this course. Student enroll does not know he has done this course. So if you're completely vanilla on your transcript, I'm going to say no. If you're actually extending the query for transcripts already, then the answer is absolutely without a doubt, because you're just going to look in the program enrollment table for students and their enrollments there, and then you're going to find that this person has done this particular course.
Thank you very much for that answer, Ernst.